like if we think of Saturn as structure, right? If we don't have structures to contain the dream or the vision or the idea, right, they just dissipate. The bodies that we are living in is the container that the dream or the vision gets to move through. Right. So how do we strengthen and tune these vehicles or these containers to be able to tune into the Neptunian vision that we can receive? Right. And then what are the practical steps that we can take to bring these visions or dreams into the world? And again, individually and also collectively.
I think this is a really great time to actually analyze your dreams in a very realistic way and ask yourself, is this really my dream or is it someone else's? Is this really going to fulfill me? Or did I think this was going to fulfill me maybe like 5-10 years ago? And I just have this in my head because where I'm at now is not good enough, but actually it might be.
And I do recognize the pain many of my brothers are in, but I think it's pain based on an illusion that needs a bubble burst and needs a reality check. What the nature of that reality check looks like is what we're going to be figuring out over the next 14 years as Neptune is in Aries.
And so I think that there is a real invitation and opportunity with Saturn, Neptune, and Aries to cultivate nonviolent responses and nonviolent strategies to achieving our sense of autonomy, freedom, and space, and that can be done in peaceful ways.
Welcome to the COSME Astrology Podcast. I am your host, Lisa Warman, and I'm so glad you're here. You were born at this time for a reason. The energy of this moment, its beauty, its transformation, its challenges, is uniquely aligned with your soul's path. You are here to live a full life of meaning, growth, and deep self-discovery, and astrology is a guide to help you get there. On this podcast, you'll hear from some of the brightest minds in astrology, along with inspiring thought leaders and voices from the wellness space. The intention behind COSME is to foster true community. That's why each episode is recorded with a live studio audience, because I believe the most powerful conversations happen when we come together in person. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. You're here for a reason. Welcome to the COSME Astrology Podcast. I am your astrologer and host, Lisa Warman, and I am so grateful and honored to be sitting here with these three dynamic and brilliant astrologers today. I would like to introduce to you Samuel Reynolds, Jonah Emerson Bell, and Reverend Lindsay Turner. So welcome to the show, you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. It's great to be here.
Yay.
Good to be back.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So this is episode 16. I can't believe it, but it is. And we're going to deep dive into Neptune and Saturn in Aries today. So before we do, I just want to acknowledge the audience. So thank you guys for being here. If you have been to COSME, you know that the intention of COSME is community. I am big on community. I'm huge on one-to-one community. Now, when we're in person, whether it's at a conference or out and about with astrologers, there's so much wisdom, so much empowerment, and so many memorable experiences that come through when we are talking one-to-one about the cosmos. It's really where the education happens, in my opinion. So the whole intention of being here is for you guys to interact with us and to be a part of this conversation. That said, we're going to have a Q&A after the show. So if you have a question that pertains to our conversation, go ahead and raise your hand, and then you can step up to this microphone and go ahead and ask your question. You can direct it to any of us or all of us. All right. So I'd like to formally introduce everyone and tell you a little bit about them. And actually, they can tell you a little bit about themselves. So we have Samuel Reynolds. Sam was my very first guest on the podcast with Clarissa Dolphin. And that was for the grand opening in 2023. So welcome back. Yeah.
Thank you for having me back.
Thank you for being here. And then we have Jonah Emerson Bell, who was with me here in January. Yeah. And we recorded episode 11. That was Neptune in Aries. So this is going to be a really great follow-up conversation to that conversation. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, and brand new to COSME Astrology and Wellness, we have Reverend Lindsay Turner. And Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us. And this is your first time here, so thanks for making the trip.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited.
Thank you. All right, so why don't we just talk a little bit? Well, you guys know me, so I'm not going to introduce myself. But Sam, if you would like to start and let the audience know who you are, what you do, and how you found astrology.
So, Sam Reynolds from Santa Fe, New Mexico, originally from Buffalo, New York, but New York City and Philadelphia. And I got into astrology trying to disprove it. And spent 10 years kicking it in the teeth, really hoping for it to be I guess a house of cards and everything to fall apart. And it never did. And I ended up an astrologer. So that's the long and short of my story. And that was in the 90s. And I hung my shingle out in 2002.
So Sam, what are you up to now? You are a professional astrologer
I'm
and
a practicing
teacher.
astrologer. I teach astrology. I go to conferences. In fact, I'm on the circuit now because my next appearance will be at NORWAC at the Northwest Astrology Conference in Seattle. So that's next month. And then I'll also be at Kepler's conference, student conference in September. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonah.
I'm Jonah Emerson Bell. I'm an astrologer, tarot reader, licensed mental health counselor, recently licensed mental health counselor. Yeah. And I found astrology because I quit drinking and I needed something to do with my life. And I was like, well, I came to the tarot first, and that was sort of my gateway into astrology. But astrology is a system for me that helped me to contextualize my life and world events. And also it was an area of study that I figured that I would never be done with. It's an kind of infinite pool of knowledge that I can continue to study and study and study and never arrive. And as a raging Sagittarius, having a project that I can never get to the end of is really attractive and beneficial.
Yes, love it. So now you're seeing clients, right?
Yep, I'm seeing astrology clients. I'm seeing therapy clients in New Mexico. I have a coaching practice. I just completed teaching an 8-week class with my partner, Marlena Seven Bremner, on the 7 classical planets through myth, magic, and alchemy. And that's all online for purchase now. And yeah, I don't know. I lecture, I talk, I do podcasts. I do too much. And I also have an astrology themed radio show called The Melee Report that comes out on SoundCloud, which is my passion. It's maybe the coolest thing that I do, where I play music for the astrological transits and then talk about them. And I do a weekly YouTube show Monday mornings. You can catch it on Instagram Live as well, where I talk about the transits of the week.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah. All right, and we have Lindsay.
Yes. Okay, so I'll start with how I came to astrology. I was having the worst time of my life, and I was wondering what was going on, and I needed answers. And I think a lot of people come to astrology because of that reason. They're like, "What is happening?" So that was in 2018. So thank you for introducing me using my title. I am an ordained minister, and so one of the difficult things that was happening at that time was that I was in the process of leaving the church. I was a church minister in a liberal denomination, and was discovering that it really was not for me. And that's a super long story that I won't get into. But so now what I do is I do a sort of, just a neat astrology practice of one-on-one consultations in person and online. But I also teach classes that are sort of hybrid, like spirituality, sometimes Christian theology or history with astrology. Last fall, Jonah and I and my collaborator, Sarah Knoll, taught a series on exorcism, and did that through the lens of progressive theology, but also through astrology, through psychology. It was really fun. So yeah, I do a lot of research for the astrology podcast. I really keep a mix, a healthy mix of what I'm getting into at any given time. And so that's I think, did I answer all of your
Yeah, you
questions?
got it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's amazing. So everyone is, pretty different here and does a lot of different things, which is so beautiful for astrology. And, I always love astrology because you can do so much with it and go on many different avenues. So, yeah. Okay, well, let's get into the juice. So, we're here to talk about Neptune and Saturn in Aries. So, on March 30th, we had Neptune ingress into Aries, and we're going to have Saturn ingress into Aries on May 25th, 2025. So, this particular transit and even conjunction, it's not so common. It doesn't happen like, a Mercury cycle or a Venus cycle. So it's really important. And I'm sure you guys have noticed we have experienced and seen and felt a lot of change happening in our world. A lot of it does have to do with the outer planets changing signs, but we are focusing on Neptune and Saturn today. So let's get into this. Who wants to start? What do you think? What are some key words and maybe even some archetypes for Aries, and then also some keywords for Neptune and Saturn, just so we can give a good foundation here for our listeners?
Autonomy is the first word that comes to mind with Aries. Autonomy, freedom, space, independence.
Initiating, right? Igniting, combusting, starting,
Breaking new ground, pioneering.
pioneering.
Hearing identity too. That's a big one. So yeah. And, this is all, it's definitely a part of Aries, but we have Neptune moving into Aries. So let's give some keywords for Neptune.
We'll go with dissolving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fog.
Yeah. Foggy.
Illusion, delusion, diffusion,
Imagination.
Dream. Glamour.
redemption.
Oh, yeah. Martyr. Right. Like savior, martyr, victim, redeemer.
Idealism.
Boundless.
Also say longing. Right.
And then let's move on to Saturn, because Saturn's got a totally different flavor than Neptune.
Daddy.
So, Daddy. Yeah. I mean, that's a good one. Instead of formless, form.
Yep.
Discipline. Structure.
Boundaries,
Responsibility, limitations,
weight,
constriction,
black,
Black.
lead.
Yeah, that's an association with Saturn. Workers.
Cold.
farmers,
Yeah, people who work in the earth, right? And also the unfortunate, right? Like the unfortunates are Saturn's people, right? The elderly, the poor,
Or the oppressed.
the oppressed.
Did we say loss? Loss.
That works.
Yeah. Loss, like losing.
time,
Time. Borders. Yeah. Those are all
wisdom,
Boundaries.
Yeah.
boundaries. Yeah. So, as you guys can see, there's just such a polarity here. Like it's a different vibration from Neptune to Saturn. And then we have Aries in the mix. So, who wants to start off by maybe talking about how this has already started to impact our collective with Neptune moving into Aries? And what are some things that you feel we may see from Saturn moving into Aries with our collective? Let's start collectively, and then maybe we go personally for how it will impact people personally.
With Neptune or Saturn or both?
I think like we can start with Neptune because it's there, right?
Right.
And then we can move into Saturn.
So there's this interest, I think, in opening up new spaces. Because last time that Neptune was in Aries pretty much from 1861 to about 1875. It was a pioneering time for America. It also was the beginning of the American Civil War. And I think there is this sense of wanting to create space with that pioneering energy, but that also can create conflict. And so I think that's some measure of what we're feeling, at least in this country, but I think around the world to some degree.
Yeah. And we should probably let the audience know too. Neptune does take 165 years to cycle through the zodiacal wheel. So this is a huge deal, like Sam said, it's been a minute. So we've felt that in our collective. And I mean, have either one of you seen anything that is just so Neptune and Aries that's popped up so far?
I think just this nebulousness around what is an individual, what are individual rights, what is freedom, what does freedom look like? I think we have really different narratives around freedom right now that are happening that feel a little, foggy, unclear, and some very different ideas about what that actually looks like. So we can see that I think distortion is a good word for Neptune. There's these distorted views of freedom and individual rights.
Absolutely. And even to bring that, deeper into Aries, like people are, I'm not saying they're losing their identity, but, right now I feel like people are like, well, where do I stand from all of that?
And that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Who am I then? And what is this dream that I thought was the dream, whether it's the American dream or, the dream of their life, and how are they maybe having to transition out of that, or maybe even let go of some of that dream because maybe it's not relevant anymore. Because when we move into Aries, Aries truly is the first sign of the zodiac, and it is that inception point. So it's that fresh energy. It's new. It's brand new. So there's a lot of change going on. And as humans, I sometimes think we get very fixated on habits or what we know, and we do the same things, and there's not a lot of room for expansion. But now, I mean, it seems like there's so much coming through that is brand new that we don't know. So it's making us question who we truly are, maybe even questioning who we are even in relationship to one another too. So I don't know if you guys feel the same way or if you want to chime in on that.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, to your point, if we think about Neptune as sort of the dream, right? The sort of what is the collective dream and what is my place in the collective dream? What is the dream that I'm trying to dream forward?
Yeah.
And, who, like you were saying, who am I in the kind of sea of consciousness or in relation to all of these people? And I think Neptune's dissolving qualities may dissolve my sense of self or like what I want, right? And I think it's an opportunity to refine one's vision or one's dream, but without a kind of strong container or strong sense of the core self. We can easily be swept up in a different dream, right? Like nationalism or fascism or any ism, right? Or even the sort of news media or social media or any of the medias, right, can come in and kind of implant dreams in us. And then we take that to be our own. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to make a bunch of money and that's how I'll be happy or that's how I'll be successful, right? Getting wrapped up in a, collective idea of what success is supposed to look like for an individual, and we lose our sense of self. And I think it's really important to tap into the core self, or that idea of this is what's really valuable to me, or this is what I truly desire, so that it doesn't get washed away by an external or more powerful voice.
Definitely.
If I might bring that into like a concrete example that we were talking about earlier today, Jonah, is this maybe particularly the millennial, zennial generations that are at the age where the American dream is the house with the white picket fence and the 2.5 children or whatever it is, and saying like, well, I don't have the material security to do that. So who am I? What do I do? And then we have this response from the government that's happening right now of this development of, oh, well, we'll do a program where we'll pay people to pay, particularly women, to have children. And if you have 5 or more children, we'll give you an award. And it's so delusional because it doesn't really address the material concern, right? And so that feels very Neptunian as well. And it's something that I've been personally sitting with of like, I'm at this age where I'm, supposed to have done these things and maybe in one world would have wanted to, but in this world I don't.
And I think that this, relates to what Sam was talking about with the Homestead Act in 1862, which opened up the West for westward expansion, which basically allowed any like white American citizen to go and like take and claim whatever land they wanted from indigenous people, right?
And I think that's coming back to some degree. I mean, I hope not taking indigenous lands or anything else, but I think even the pipe dream, and I'm going to call it that, the pipe dream of going to Mars, I think is part of that. The idea that we're going to start to colonize other places is this pioneering spirit that we've talked about. But and that pioneering spirit also comes with, if we look back in history, especially to 1861 and beyond, looking for community, because during that particular period, we have the rise of spiritualism. We also have the rise of communism and the idea of communes. We have the writings of Karl Marx. We have the visionary ideas that come later from H.G. Wells, who was born with Neptune and Aries, as an example. And then we have the visionary ideas and ideals of W.E.B. Du Bois, who was also born during that time. And so there is this vision quest that we have from Neptune and Aries, but it's kind of scattershot.
So how do you think, Sam, having Saturn co-present is going to affect that and everything you said, or even play a part in that? Or maybe, I don't want to say remediate it, or like, what do you think will happen? Or what do you think Saturn's job will be?
I think Neptune is going to cause some measure of erasure, or we could say dissolution. And then Saturn, commensurate with that, will try to address, well, what's the new structure? When we talk about the fall of the Berlin Wall, which I know we'll get to more, from 1989, we're also from the Saturn-Neptune conjunction of 1989 in Capricorn. We also have to recognize that was also not just the fall of the Berlin Wall, but of the Soviet Empire, right? And the Soviet dream, an idea. And even though it looks like, well, yeah, America won, yeah. But I think in terms of looking at it in terms of humanity, it was the death of a dream, the death of a vision. And then it was about restructuring afterward. And that's the Saturn part. Now, with it being Aries, it might be dealing with more fundamental structures, more primary structures. Now, what structures those are, I don't want to get into per se, but I guess we'll get into it. Yeah, right. Go on, Lindsay.
I just gave Sam a knowing look. No, I think we're going to get into it. Well, I mean, even just a prelude to this, right? There was like an 8-hour-long power outage in 2.5 countries in Europe yesterday. Yep. I mean, that's wild, right? I don't know if y'all heard of that, but Spain, Portugal, and I think in south of France, maybe southern France. Yeah, no power, no streetlights. And, I had a couple of Instagram friends who were posting stories about it and saying, this is so weird. I'm sort of having an existential crisis because I'm realizing how much I depend on electricity and the internet. That was a big one too, not just electricity, but the internet. And we were outside and I got this feeling that people were experiencing almost a sense of nudity, right? Outside in the streets with their neighbors looking around going, I've never talked to any of these people and now that's all there is to do. Right. But then people started drinking and dancing and talking and having a party. And so there is this that seems very
No, that's spot on. I mean, because that also couples with, the darker part, no pun intended, in terms the darker part of what I imagine is beginning in other countries, like in the continent, in Africa, since we've cut off aid. And so a lot of people may not have, I won't even say amenities as much as necessities that to which they become accustomed.
Yeah.
And I think to this story about the power outage and people being outside and kind of unplugging from the matrix for a minute and being like, oh, what do we do? I guess like we're gonna start.
I can touch you.
Yeah, you're
3D.
real. Yeah. Right. And Saturn is reality, right? 3D, right? Is a very Saturnian thing. But Neptune is also Dionysian, right? And the sort of coming outside and being like, what do we do? I guess let's get drunk and dance, right?
Disaster party.
Yeah, exactly. And in one of Neptune's periods in Aries, which was 1370 to 1383, was the St. John's dancing plague, where very Dionysian, where German peasants left their farms and went to I can't remember the town, but they like had like a 2-week rave where people would dance until they passed out or fell down. And this was like an act of resistance and rebellion against the sort of oppressive conditions of being a subsistence like serf farmer. And, so people kind of got the like dancing plague and they like went into this Dionysian frenzy and would just like dance. This is also like post-Black Plague, and the landlords didn't have enough people to replace their peasants. So people were like, whatever, dude, I'm out. Got the dancing plague.
So that's like
gotta go.
That's like the Great Reset, though.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for real.
And you bring up another point, I think, because we're looking more for concrete examples. So my best friend is in fitness, and he actually, since the pandemic or the beginning of the pandemic to about now, he's been able to make a good living doing virtual trainings. And I think that's going the way of the dodo to some degree, where people are either going to boutique gyms or going back in the gym or looking to be fit together with people. Like, I think this is representative of the kind of Saturn Neptune moment where people want to be more in person and not just virtual. I know I got sick of it, 2 years ago. That's why I'm glad I connected with Lindsay, and we've been doing in-person events in Santa Fe. But I think that's going to be more of a thing.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting just to kind of speak to that. So when Neptune, and we've talked about this on the last pod, but when Neptune was in Pisces, we just saw the rise of social media and truly being behind the screen, right? Yeah. So it was so easy to create a persona and identity from on Instagram, and it didn't even have to resonate really with who you are. I know a lot of people who showed up differently IRL than on social media, and it's wild to think about that. And I do think that is so true, and there's so much validity. People are going to want in person now, and it's happening already. I've noticed a lot more in-person events, even in the astrological community. I feel like since maybe like mid last year, things have been, there's been an uptick in the in-person. So that's been really amazing. And I'm not saying social media is going to go away. Of course, we'll always have it, but I'm wondering what it's going to look like going forward.
Madness. I think also it's going to have some dimension, and you kind of just stirred the idea of no filter, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What's interesting about like Twitter, and I spent since 2009 on Twitter, right? But there's no filter really anymore, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's mostly, in my terminology, a bad thing, but I think it probably can come out in some good ways too. I want you to show up with your face card, right? Show up with your full face, your real self. So that could be a good way.
Yeah, I'm not a tweeter? Is that what it's called, a Twitterer?
Is that what you kids are calling it?
It's called,
yeah.
I don't know what they call it anymore.
It's called post now.
a post.
All right, I've never been on, so I don't know, but I can imagine, yes, like there's a lot of room for, yeah, you don't even have to show your face, right? It's like,
Yeah, you don't have to show your face, but you can show your ass for sure.
Yeah.
oh,
You
okay.
just fire off whatever unhinged shit like is in your mind.
Yeah.
Really?
I think that social media is diseased right now.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
because it has become there, we have these big conglomerates that are mouthpieces for oligarchs. And I think another thing that may happen in thinking about Aries and kind of like individuals, right? Not necessarily the Pisces, like the big community kind of thing or big like unity, is more individually hosted, like Mastodon, things like that. I think that may become more popular where not everyone is in one place, but there are, it's more striated than it has been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, just a question. What do you think about TikTok and Instagram? Do you guys think these apps will stand the test of time, or do you think we're going to see something totally different? I mean, I don't know all the new apps, but I know there's a few that are coming out that like may be a little bit different from what we see, because I'm wondering if that plays into this at all.
Well, Saturn in Pisces tests the nature of boundaries,
Yeah.
right? And tests the nature of, because one of the reasons I thought Donald Trump would win, not because I was going to vote for him. Okay, just want to say that, just to be clear. But I thought he would win because last time Saturn was in the sign of Jupiter, he won. And that was Saturn in Sagittarius. So now we're dealing with Saturn in Pisces and moving from that, but that is dealing with how we have the sense of boundaries. And as it's moving into Aries and then with Neptune, I think one of the things that's being questioned with social media is, are we going to remain in our tight boundaries a certain way? Even though it was always supposedly international, there's a particular app, and someone's going to know it here. It's called Red something. Yeah,
Red
thank
Note.
you, Red Note.
Yeah.
Where now there's more of an interpenetration of talking with Chinese folks and then talking with, folks in the West. And now there's more of a discourse like, oh, you have this, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, you got to pay for an ambulance? Whoa,
Wow.
That's messed up. You think
And
you're
so
free.
it's not just under singular kinds of control in certain ways. So we may see that advancing. And so Instagram does kind of silo things, right?
Sure.
The algorithm kind of becomes a law, in that sense. And I think in a similar way, same thing for TikTok, I think we're going to be looking for ways to break the algorithm. And that's fascinating to me because I think Neptune deals with higher math. Neptune was the first planet discovered by math
Okay.
before it was discovered with a telescope.
When Neptune was discovered, wasn't Saturn co-present?
Not remembering that. But
Okay, does anyone know?
I don't know if Gail.
I thought. Do you know, Gail? Do you know if Saturn was co-present when Neptune was discovered? No. Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
all good. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But that's also really interesting to think about. I probably should have done that research before we started recording. Sorry, guys.
We all have a machine that we could probably find out pretty
Yeah,
easily.
let's do
do.
that.
We don't have to.
But I'm
Because
listening. Go on.
yeah, because that's really history repeats itself, so that could be really interesting to think about during this time. All right, well, let's pivot away from social media and talk, while Sam's looking that up, let's talk a little bit about more of like the collective impact and how this is going to impact us maybe as human beings, but also energetic beings. Because when I think of Neptune and I also think of Saturn, I think about Neptune energy, right? And then Saturn, I do think of the body and I think of hygiene. So I'm thinking of like energetic hygiene. And I do find that more people are either becoming more aware of their energetic space and really going deep in and understanding that we are more than just a body and a mind. Like we do have a spirit and our energy affects everything. But then I also find people who are just oblivious to that. But that's Neptune, right? Because it could be like illusion, and then Saturn's kind of the reality. So
Saturn and Neptune were conjoined at 25 degrees Aquarius.
okay.
You were
Good
right.
memory.
Nice.
Okay. Well, that was like in the back of my mind, and I wasn't sure. So that's cool. That's
Well
wild.
done.
Thanks. Wild. Well, I mean, it was in Aquarius, so that's an air sign. That definitely is much different than Aries. But that's good to know.
But you were on a different track. I am
Yeah,
sorry.
but now I was just talking about energetic hygiene, and I think we're moving into a time where people are becoming either more aware of themselves energetically, how their energy affects other people, or it's the flip side that people are just totally not paying attention. So I'm not sure if you've seen that out in the world or if you have any thoughts on that.
I do. Yeah. So one of the things that I think a lot about, like the self-awareness of one's own energy, is gender. And I think right now we're having a really interesting evolution or revolution around gender, where some folks are like, I'm non-binary, so I so I have a bias, but some folks are like, I don't get it. It's just like man and woman. We saw a big billboard when we were driving in that was like, just as God made them, like man and woman. And but there's so much more like gender expansive language and identity now than we've ever had. And I think a lot of people are like, why are there so many trans people all of a sudden? Like, this just must be like a disease. But I think of how they've done scientific studies on the more names that you have for colors, the more colors you can actually see. And I think that feels really true with gender too. The more names and concepts and ideas that you have for gender, the more expansive and fluid gender can feel, and your own experience of gender can feel. And so I think of that in terms of Aries, like what are the new ideas of how to be an individual, how to be a person. And I think gender is such a huge category for how we think of ourselves as individuals.
Absolutely. And I love that example about the color because it's so true. The more you can see, I mean, the more there is. So how does that relate to other things? I mean, we're talking about gender, we're talking about Aries, identity, and then there's Neptune. So Neptune can be dreams. I really feel like we're going to see some really innovative stuff coming up here that maybe we thought was never possible. And we're seeing it already, but are there any examples you guys want to share of that, and anything you've seen, or maybe where you think we're going?
Well, just briefly, and speaking to Lindsay's point, right? Like if we think of Saturn as structure, right? If we don't have structures to contain the dream or the vision or the idea, right? They just dissipate.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we can get with Saturn and Neptune conjoining is bringing Saturnian structure to the vision or the imagination or the dream, giving us the structure of language. This is color, this is gender, this is identity, this is who I am, this is how I feel. Without that, we can't express it, and those needs go unmet. The flip side of that is Saturn as limiting and constricting is it can like really shut down those dreams. It can shut down those possibilities or those ideals. And I think, with a conjunction, there's the sort of blending of these two energies. And it's kind of our job to like sort that out. Oh, is this limitation actually providing a structure for something new to come into form, right? Or is this limitation, or is this container not the right one? Is it not strong enough to be able to hold the vision or the ideal? And so I think part of the work of this time is really developing a worthy container to hold the vision or hold the dream. And I think that's going to look different for everybody individually, right? And the bodies that we are living in is the container that the dream or the vision gets to move through, right? So how do we strengthen and tune these vehicles or these containers to be able to tune into the Neptunian vision that we can receive, right? And then what are the practical steps that we can take to bring these visions or dreams into the world? And again, individually and also collectively.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because it can be the dream coming into formation, or it could be the loss of a dream because the foundation isn't solid enough. So it is that test. It's either or.
Before we leave that,
Yeah.
Yeah, I have so much to say on
Yeah,
this
go,
too.
There's a couple-
go off.
different things. First, I will answer your question. Then I want to go to something Lindsay has said. I think we may see some more advances in neuroscience and biochemistry, mainly because we are reaching the point, maybe with the help of AI. I'm not a big AI proponent, but I think AI may help to be able to get some measure of specificity for individual treatment and remediation for individuals, related to their own biology. I mean, we're collecting so much data. I mean, I'm wearing 2 data devices right now, my Apple Watch and Oura Ring, right? And so with that kind of data, one could get the certain level of specificity for the kind of medication that you need or the kind of dosing or particular things. And I think that may be an advance related also, since Aries rules the head, related to also brain development and understandings, which we're making a lot of inroads with. In a different sense, not having the optimism of my buddy over here.
That's fine.
Men are a problem. Saturn and Neptune in Aries, in a sign of Mars.
Old men.
Men. I'm serious about this.
Yeah.
Because people seem baffled, like, well, how did Trump win? Because men don't feel seen. Men are in pain, and I'm not saying then, like, I'll feel sorry for them. I don't. I mean, I feel that there's some, and I'm a man, I'm a cis-het man, and I do recognize the pain many of my brothers are in, but I think it's pain based on an illusion that needs a bubble burst and needs a reality check. What the nature of that reality check looks like is what we're going to be figuring out over the next 14 years as Neptune is in Aries. And I think a lot of people who are more hooked into the feminine are like, oh, well, we want to deal with it. And that's a problem. And I think it's a calling for men. I notice that we don't have anyone who's recognized. I don't know if you're born male or whatever, but we don't have a lot of men here. And I think that is, that is an issue. And I think that's something else we're going to need to address related to the gender question.
Oh, totally. I think we're already seeing crackdowns on enforcing gender. The UK Supreme Court just made a ruling within the last week or
what
two.
What a woman is, or 2 weeks ago.
On defining what a woman is. I mean, they're doing it. I'm just saying, I still think we won't be able to stop the diversification of concept and language around how we can be individuals, even though
really
they will
Saturn,
try.
Neptune. It's really Saturn, Neptune.
Yeah, they will try. Of course, I agree. It's scary. It's scary.
It is scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I drop the mic? Is that cool? That was really, no, it's so true. And I really think what you said about men is so right on in the way that it is an illusion. So I feel like what we have been told by society in the ways of gender, how we need to look, how we need to act, all those things, they are starting to hopefully disintegrate and go away because
or reintegrate or become something different.
Disintegrate and then reintegrate. Become something different because so many people do conform to that and, whatever, that's okay. But at the same time, there's so much more. And to be able to follow our own hearts and our own soul and the way we truly feel inside, I do feel like that's a part of all of this with Aries because that is the identity and the disintegration and the reintegration of that is coming together.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think with Saturn there, right? Saturn is conservative,
right?
And wants to hold on to what it knows. And I think that there is fear that Saturn has that, if things change, then I lose power. Right. And this is the story of Kronos, who eats his children.
Yep.
Right. So they can't dethrone him, can't let the new things come up because I'll lose my power. So it wants to hold on to what is known and what is already solid. And I think, Saturn in Aries is in its fall, right? And is only there for 3 years. Neptune is going to be there for 14 years. And so I think a lot of what we see is, Neptune dissolving things, Saturn coming in and being like, I need to fix this, right? I need to hold on to it. and then is going to move off into Taurus. And then Neptune's going to be like, oh, that's cool that you tried to build that up really quickly, and then just like dissolve the things that don't have a strong foundation. And Saturn in Aries like doesn't have the time to make a strong foundation because it's in its fall, right? It needs to
rushed.
Yeah, it's rushed, needs to like fix the problems quickly, like put a Band-Aid on them. And I think that we're going to see this with infrastructure, which is
Absolutely.
a very Saturnian thing, like the structures of the world and our systems. And I think that we're going to see systems failing, and Saturn in Aries is going to try and fix them as best as they can, but is not going to have the time to do it right. And then Neptune's just going to be like, cool job, bro. And just wash it away, you know.
It reminds me of having a very old house that was owned by people who didn't take the best care of it beforehand, and then you go to find that something's broken, or maybe like on the verge of being broken because someone did, I call it an uncle job, where they just like just asked their uncle to come fix it instead of a professional, and then you're like, ooh, I gotta like figure out a very quick way to like fix this. Well, the term that you used at the outset of the episode was a house of cards. I know you weren't even referring to any of this, but you called something a house of cards. And I think that that's a really great Saturn and Neptune phrase, like a house of cards. Flimsy, but you know, you're trying to get it to stay.
Yeah, but I've got 15 minutes and I got it built.
No one breathe.
Yeah, exactly.
Along with a lot of intrigue.
Yeah.
Right? Speaking of House of Cards.
Yeah, the show,
Yeah, definitely. And that's interesting because even as actual structures are being built, I mean, I have a background in interior design and also commercial design, and I see that the structures just look kind of like pieced together and weaker nowadays. And it's so, it's wild. And now that you said that, I am wondering what's going to happen.
Also,
They don't make it like they used to.
Yeah. And I think
Totally.
a lot of people in interior design or product design and all of these things, especially from, you know, our time with Neptune in Pisces, it's I want it to look like this Instagram. I want it to look like this image that I saw on the computer, which is like heavily filtered. It's an illusion. And they're like, I want my physical 3D space to look like that, right, with a very small budget. And, you know, getting the physical to the ideal is proving more and more challenging, especially with AI, which is kind of skewing what reality feels like and what it looks like and what it can look like. And so I think that there's this big disconnect between the sort of vision and the actual physical reality, which is kind of separating further and further and further. And I think with Neptune and Saturn coming together, we really need to reckon with that. And I think that reckoning is going to be really difficult.
That's interesting.
And I want to go back to what you were asking too about hygiene, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
energy.
Sorry, we kind of went.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I remembered.
Okay.
I think I talked about boutique wellness, right? But I think we also might see, and when I say boutique, more self-contained, smaller aspects of something, right? Rather than just a conglomerate fixation that we've had or the larger fixation. And so I think that also may translate into a certain dimension of spirituality, where we may see the proliferation of individuals kind of talking about their own spirituality. And that could be like, well, that sounds like Neptune. The Saturn is going to be the question, are they going to be bringing in their own ethos, right? Are they going to be bringing in an actual ethical center, or does it become licensed to do whatever you want? Like, I was feeling the spirit, and that's why I crashed your car, bro. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and it, you know, is that right? You know, and yeah, we're not going to have the container of religion. Like, it's fascinating that this Pope passed away as Neptune has left Pisces.
That's a big one.
And he
That
pretty
is-
much came in the early days of Neptune in Pisces. And so he leaves now, and it's kind of like, well, what is this Pope going to look like? And I'm just using the Pope as an example. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic or not. It's just more that we're dealing with a moment that I think is going to be reflective of how we're dealing with spiritual hygiene, energetic hygiene, and religion to some degree, or how we practice our ethos in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good example. And I didn't think of that. So let's talk about moments, right? Because we are in a moment. And when Saturn is co-present, we're going to be in a different moment. Now, we know as astrologers, for the astrologers in the room and who are listening, that inception points are really important, right? So we kind of get a flavor of what a transit is going to feel like or look like when the sign starts to move in. And so I feel like really with Pluto and Aquarius, I personally was like, whoa. When Pluto first moved into Aquarius, I saw a lot of AI, and I didn't know what Chat GPT was at the time. And it was kind of scary, to be honest with you. I'm like, what is all this? What's happening? And then now it's so common. Not you, Sam, maybe not you guys, but everybody uses.
No, it scared me.
Yeah, I feel like everyone uses AI now, like full on. So what are some things we're seeing right now in this moment where we think they're going to either like start to expand or maybe they will dissolve?
Well, I think this is like the two sides of this coin, right? The shadow is the ecological impact of AI is a huge thing. Is that sustainable? That feels very Saturn in Aries, right? With we don't know. And also, what's real? What's AI generated? What's human generated? We don't know. I think one thing that's going to be really hot with AI is it sentient? At what point do we determine that this is Aries, an individual consciousness, right? Like something that has burst forth from the soup and become its own thing. I think that's already an ethical question. And I have friends who are like, "Dear Sir AI, will you please help me and not kill me when the robot revolution comes?" But then I think the part that I also don't want to discount is, and this also gets back to the individual pieces, how does this free up human energy? What's possible not only with health, right, but what's possible with time and energy if I have AI doing all this work for me? How do I become more free, or how do I become enslaved by this thing, right? Like there are a lot of questions that come about for that. So I think that's like we're in a lot of AI moments right now.
That's huge. Yeah, especially the sentient piece. I think that's going to be big in the future, especially. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on it, Jonah?
Yeah, I'm just recalling this meme that I saw that's like, I want AI to do the dishes and clean my house so that I can make art and write poetry.
Yes.
And it's like the reverse of that.
Yes.
And I think that every time humanity has had a new technology that's supposed to make life easier, we end up working more. Like the internet was supposed to like free everybody up so that we could just be like living our best lives. Instead, we're all just like responding to emails constantly. You know what I'm saying? And we're supposed like
Do you hate email, Jonah?
I hate email. It is. I would rather sit down and write a letter by hand than respond to an email.
I'll start sending you snail mail.
Please do send me postcards. You'll
Dear
get a quicker
Jonah,
response.
can you please co-host the Gemini meetup with me next month?
Dear Lindsay, you got it.
Love it.
And like we all have these like supercomputers attached to our bodies now, right? Our phones, right? And that was supposed to, free us up to do all these things. And in some ways it does, but it also makes us accessible 24 hours a day. And if you get an email from your job, you're supposed to respond to it in a timely manner, even if it's, 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. And now we're all, and this is this has been going on for a while, but this is maybe like some of the permeability that like Neptune brings, is we're all supposed to be available constantly to each other. And if we're not, then there's something wrong, and maybe the Saturn conjoining with Neptune will help, structure some boundaries, even though Neptune may be dissolving the boundaries just as we're structuring them up, And I think about, maybe your like road starts to wash out in a downpour, in a monsoon, and you're like, oh, I got to stack up these stones to like prevent the road from washing out, and then you walk away and the road just washes out again, right? And I think that's how this like sort of very kind of porous Neptunian feeling meets that like Saturnian structure, and we're just trying to structure the thing as best we can, and then it just like gets washed away again. We find ourselves in this like porous space.
I'm less worried about the sentience. Because
I'm glad one of us is.
I am. Because I think
Thank you, Sam.
That worries me the most.
the dimensions of being able to, because we've been talking about the dream of recreating life for a long time, as human beings. I mean, that actually led to the first science fiction story, which is Frankenstein. And I think we have the dream of that. But I'm more concerned related to what you said about the ecological ramifications of it, because the ecological ramifications also have political ramifications. And the political ramifications is war. So one of the reasons that we are interested, I should say the United States is interested in Greenland and Canada is more so because of its natural resources. And climate change, you mentioned that earlier today, but also I think it's to position ourselves, or to position the United States in response to Russia doing the same thing. And I think that is what concerns me, because whenever we're talking about these motions, we still have to go back to more the mundane aspect of like the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, right? We can talk about Pluto in Aquarius, we can talk about Uranus and Gemini, but the conjunctions, the great conjunctions, have been like our guidelines for different epochs of history. And actually, they endure longer than any of the movements of the outer planets. So they last 240 years. And just to be clear on what I'm talking about, is that when Jupiter and Saturn conjoin, they conjoin every 20 years in the same element, except for one time when there's a mutation. So the 1980-81 conjunction was what we could say the mutation of Jupiter and Saturn in air. But the following 20 years, it was Jupiter and Saturn in Taurus. In the previous years, it was Jupiter and Saturn in other Earth signs. Jupiter and Saturn together in 2020, in December of 2020, was the first time that they had come together in air and will stay in air in Aquarius, pretty much at 0 degrees Aquarius. So when Pluto hit that point, it's reactivating that. And then why I'm bringing that up, that is not ushering in the Aquarian age per se, but this age dealing with information and the need to kind of have information as leverage and power.
Yeah.
And I think, so when we're talking about technology, we're talking about it on the heels of dealing with 240 years in Earth science, which gave us the Industrial Revolution. And so we're going to be talking about actual material resources while simultaneously talking about using these resources for more informational control and dissemination. And that's kind of, what frames some of this too.
Yeah. Now that you frame it that way, yes, I think that is probably the biggest concern. Yeah. Still the sentience though.
Dear Mr. Robot, I really love you. Thank you for helping me.
But
Yeah,
no,
a lot of people are practicing that for real. So
that's wild.
Doesn't hurt.
I
Probably doesn't
didn't
hurt.
probably
know
doesn't
that.
hurt.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Be like, we remember you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And definitely it is going to play a huge part politically. And what do you think people can do right now in order to make the highest and best decision for our society?
Related to Saturn and Neptune, or just in general?
Yeah, related to Saturn and Neptune.
I'm a big believer in getting to know your neighbors, talking to people. I think it becomes important to deal with, like we talked about, the physicality. And I also believe in learning to hold space for difference. I mean, I've been revisiting the ideas and ideals of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and also of Malcolm X. And one of the things in revisiting and looking at their charts and thinking about them is that, as much as people will poise them as being at odds with each other. They really weren't. They dovetailed a lot between each other. But it was really more about building community and having real activism. I think the social media age has given us the idea that, followers or social media connections is actual power. And I actually think, building with people in real terms and real ways and then sharing resources, that's real power. More and more, I see that.
And doing it before all the lights go out.
And before
Yeah.
when the
real,
lights
for
go
real.
out,
It's too late.
it's too late.
Yeah. But that's the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And
This is why what you're doing is so important. Like, it's not, you could have just done this all online, right?
I don't know how to do that.
Right.
So
You could have, but you didn't. And so now, breathing in the same space, we can conspire together. That's literally what it means. Conspire is like con with, and spire is to breathe. So we can breathe together. So
yeah, definitely. And there's so much power, like I was saying, coming together. There's empowerment, there's education. We feel each other's energy. So I think that is huge going into this time, as long as our energetic hygiene is being upkept. So
and that's huge, by the way. I think being in places like that, like this, like Tucson, Santa Fe, being connected to the land, taking spiritual baths, connecting with your ancestors, being in the dialogue with your gods, right? That's important, because a lot of people into astrology will kind of consider the heavens, on paper, but not look at the heavens, right? And not connect with the heavens. And learning the astronomy, but also beholding the stars with your heart. I think that becomes important as part of hygiene. Because if you don't have good spiritual hygiene, it's like going out funky,
yeah.
right? Like literally in the street, like, oh, okay, like you're not wearing anything, like even soap to kind of cover your scent.
Definitely.
Going out funky.
I like that. Yeah. And, that brings up just kind of to go back to the whole social media thing, being able to, like, when we're on social media, we're trying to, I was thinking about this weekend, actually, because I had a retreat here. And after the retreat, I said, no one will ever feel what we went through during the retreat on social media. Like, that will never happen, because there's no way to create that type of energy on social media. You have to be in person in order to receive that, in order to give that, in order to feel that. So with Neptune and Saturn in Aries, I almost feel like it may start, and we kind of talked about this earlier, but like so many astrologers, healers, people in the wellness space are on Instagram and social media, and that's fine. And I think it's great, but I don't think certain people will stand the test of time if they don't truly practice and embody that energetic hygiene, because you can fake the funk on social media.
Right.
You can. Well, you can. So just to
I
circle
like
back
you
to
can't
that.
fake the funk.
So we talked a lot about how this is going to impact us collectively. We did talk about how people may be impacted individually. We talked a lot about gender, social media. We talked about war. We talked about politics. But I always like to give the audience and our listeners something to think about and something to take with them. A lot of times with Neptune and also with Saturn, I feel like there's maybe a dream or a part of our identity that wants to be released, especially because Aries is there. But what would you say to the audience or our listeners on how they can work with this for themselves, like starting with them and then moving outward into society? Because it does start with us.
So something that comes up for me is a story from the Odyssey where Odysseus has to go by the sirens. Right? And the sirens are, these mermaids that are singing this like exquisite song that when anyone hears it, they veer off course and crash into the rocks, where the sirens then run their pockets and pillage anything of wealth and like leave you there shipwrecked. And as Odysseus is he's told as him and his crew are going by that they should stop up their ears with wax so they can't hear the song and be driven off course. And Odysseus is like, that's cool, but I want to know what that sounds like. And so I want you all to tie me to the mast, and no matter what I say, don't let me go. And y'all just pilot the ship past. And so, I think about Neptune as the siren song, right? This beautiful melody that, has everything that we want, this dream, this vision, like, oh my God, it's going to be so good. And if we follow that, we can crash into the rocks, right? But like what Odysseus does that's genius is he can hear this like really psychedelic song, right? But he can't go after it, right? Because he is tied to that mast. And he is tied to that mast by people that he trusts. And so thinking about Neptune and Saturn, like Saturn is that mast, right? That like thing that holds us on course so that we can partake of the beautiful music of the universe or the sirens, and to receive this sort of gift in a way without it taking us off course and dashing our ship against the rocks. And so, yeah, to be able to hold the kind of beautiful potential, the dream, the vision of what Neptune can be, while maintaining our personal alignment and be like holding to that thing that is keeping us on track. And I think that's a really good way of working with this individually.
That was beautiful.
That is really beautiful.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah. Jonah, do you have any examples of how people can stay grounded like that?
For me, one of the things that comes up is spiritual practice, right? Or just practice, because Saturn is responsibility. Saturn is dedication. Saturn is doing what you say you're going to do. Saturn is building something lasting over a long period of time. For me, I have Saturn in the 12th house. I have a magic practice. I have a meditation practice, right? These are things that help me to keep that alignment, right? I say that I'm going to do these things, and, this is a promise that I make to myself and also to, some of the like energies that I work with, to my ancestors, so I try and keep up my end of the bargain, because that's what Saturn is looking for, that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, right? And be responsible and show up. This is what I do. This doesn't have to be what you do, right? But finding something that you're like, I am doing this and I'm showing up consistently to do this thing, to move this vision of my future self forward to what I want it to look like, right? My vision of the world, I'm doing my part to show up on a daily basis, suiting up and showing up to get this thing done, and I think that is helps to form that container that holds the vision or the ideal that Neptune brings, right? It allows us to hear that siren song without veering off course.
And that's that part of Saturn that will like allow you to grow and then like give you a little polish afterwards. Like you've up leveled, because every time you tell yourself you're going to do something and you follow through with it, that's a boost of self-confidence. Yep. That's a confirmation for yourself, and you're able to trust in yourself. And, that's a huge part of all this too. So
thank you.
Yeah. That's great. I love that example. Lindsay,
I do. My hope for people on first an individual and then a collective basis is that they release the myth of redemptive violence. So I think a lot of us associate violence with the sign of Aries, and I don't think that's necessary. I think violence is a strategy of Mars, but I don't think Aries is an inherently violent sign. And I've been hearing a lot of like war and all this stuff with Aries, and I don't think it has to be that way. And so just starting with the self, right, that I don't have to punish myself. I don't have to harm myself or allow others to harm me because I, for some reason, deserve that. Because once we can cultivate that understanding within, we are so much less likely to try to punish or harm someone else or make moralistic judgments about other people that end with this, they deserve it, they have it coming mentality. And so I think that there is a real invitation and opportunity with Saturn, Neptune, and Aries to cultivate nonviolent responses and nonviolent strategies to achieving our sense of autonomy, freedom, and space, and that can be done in peaceful ways within and outside of us.
So beautiful and powerful. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Sam, do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's dovetailing, I guess, between the two of them in some sense. But more with Jonah's idea. I was talking with Jonah and Lindsay earlier about, especially with the theme of Saturn and Neptune and Aries, about allowing your God to call you, right? And why I'm saying about a God is because a God or a saint or some divinity is some way in which you experience your presence in the universe. I know a lot of people will say, like, I'm just tuned to the universe. And I get that, but there is a part of the universe that's trying to kill you. Right. And I think that why I'm saying it that way is that the universe is vast, but we need some point of focus, some way in which we, deal with it. And what was the analogy you gave me?
Oh yeah, being like, oh, I'm on the internet.
I'm on, right. It's saying to someone like, I'm on the internet, like, but where? Like, do you have an address?
Yeah. Is it Firefox? Is it Safari?
Right.
Is it Ask Jeeves? Like, how
Right.
are
Or
you?
you-
Ask Jeeves, what a
Ask Jeeves took us
throwback.
back.
You know I
Right.
love that dude.
So it's more so getting to the specificity, but it requires listening. It requires attunement. It requires the stillness of Saturn with Neptune in order to hear your God's call. And your God's call could be the ideal. And when I say God, if anyone's offended by that, you can say your saint, your divinity, you can say, your spirit animal. It doesn't matter. It's just some way in which you have some sense of the quote unquote higher sense, your diamond, your daemon, some way in which you have something that hooks you into the larger sense of yourself. And then that forms your ethos, how you can be more in the world and what you bring into the world. And then connecting with other people.
Beautiful. It's almost like creating the structure for connecting to your God or your spiritual growth.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we do with altars and other things, so that could be to ancestors as well.
Yeah, I love that. I would like to say, just simply with Neptune and Saturn and Aries, if there are any, outdated dreams or maybe even pipe dreams that no longer serve you, just allowing
There's a
Your-
pipe
With
dream.
the pipes.
Yeah.
Wow, this
Right
room
on
has
cue.
commentary.
Right on cue.
yeah, that was planned. Just kidding. No, but if there are any outdated dreams or maybe even pipe dreams that you've just been holding on to for a long time, because sometimes we don't let go, right? We just keep it on the hamster wheel and we're like, all right, I've just got to get to this point. I've got to do this. This dream is going to fulfill me. I think this is a really great time to actually analyze your dreams in a very realistic way and ask yourself, is this really my dream or is it someone else's? Is this really going to fulfill me? Or did I think this was going to fulfill me maybe like 5-10 years ago? And I just have this in my head because where I'm at now is not good enough, but actually it might be. So just being able to really think about that and how that informs your identity and, allowing yourself to release what no longer needs to be there anymore, because Neptune is able to do that. And Saturn creates that, I call it like the 12th grade teacher. It's kind of like, all right, are you going to graduate? Are you going to move on? Are you really going to do this? It's like that. What do I want to say? Like a cross check, like a fact check, like, hey, is this real? Is this dream real? So that's what I would say to everybody in the audience. All right. Snaps. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about with Neptune and Saturn and Aries? I know we could probably talk for hours, but if there's anything.
Hear what they have to say.
Yeah. So if you've been here before, you know that we do a Q&A. So if anyone has a question or anything you want to say or bring up, please come up to the microphone and it's all yours. Or a Neptune in Aries story, or even something you've been anticipating with Saturn. Do you want to come up? Yeah, come on up. Also, welcome back from Greece.
Oh, Adina. Oh, is that Adina?
No, that's not Dina. That's Casey.
Okay, so
That's she's missing.
what I want to bring up is that everyone talks about like the crutch, I'm calling it a crutch, of people hiding behind social media and, giving like a fake facade. Well, I'm a very authentic person. People were fake before social media. Mm-hmm. They didn't need that to be fake. So I think we need to eliminate the idea that that's the only way people were being fake. And also, like everything that got brought up for AI and everything, the biggest problem is people. Like, the people who are controlling AI, that's the biggest problem to the environment. It's not the AI is going to come and become sentient and kill us. It's the people controlling it who want to make money off of it. So it's people being fake. It's people who want to make money. It's people who have bad intentions. So it's people. People are the problem. I mean, they're the solution. They're wonderful, but there's a lot of bad people.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially because we are talking about Aries, and that is the identity. So if it is someone who has ill intentions, then that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I do agree that being in person is good and wonderful and helpful, and I love it, but I think that we've been focusing too much on the internet or social media being a problem when the problem is still the people hiding behind the issues.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So that was
100%.
not a question, but just something for everyone to think about in that way.
It's like, it's a tool, and it's how we use it, right? And how people use it and what their intention is behind social media. Yeah, that's a good point, to separate the people from the social media. Yeah, but also I think about how social media is run and like algorithms and all of that, and that's kind of a thing.
But those are the people who want to make money.
That's
so it's,
true.
It's terrible people. People, it's people.
That makes sense. Yeah, do you guys have any comments?
Sam's looking really thoughtful.
I am thoughtful. I'm thinking maybe you might want to go first.
No, I know that you probably have something you want to say about that.
I guess where I might differ in your thoughts, do you think people who want to make money are terrible?
Not all of them.
But at all?
Do I think wanting to make money is terrible?
Yes.
No.
So I think one of the things that may become illuminated by, and this is older than any of this in terms of Saturn and Neptune, is that we're all trying to approach life with our own series of illusions and delusions. Mm-hmm. And I think holding space, having some measure of compassion and firmness at the same time becomes important. Because one of the things that has happened, to your point about, people, is that we think people who think differently from us are bad. And I think that's where we must be challenged. And that's why I had to go back to Dr. King, because I was like, I've studied King pretty much most of my life, but in this particular moment, I'm like, oh, now I know what you're talking about, as he was talking and dealing with white supremacists. And he never lost sight of their humanity. Because when we think about love, we often think like, oh, I have to hug you and tolerate you. He wasn't tolerating bigotry, but he was holding space for their humanity. So I just would encourage you to remind us all to hold space for our humanity, rather than just looking at it in terms of they're bad people or anything like that. Because I think when we get into that, it can become us versus them.
I'm hearing like a concern that I'm wondering if you're feeling worried about displacing blame onto non-human things because you value accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of authentic, wonderful people, and I don't think everyone's bad. There are obviously some very bad people who are trying to control, like consolidate power and control things like that. But I want people to understand that, yeah, we put the blame on social media or this device or whatever. But before that, people, well, I mean, it was the internet, but people were, faking their identities on AOL. Before the internet, people were pretending to be other people or not being authentic in person.
I'm glad, but not to interrupt you, but to kind of build on what we're talking about, and then also what Lindsay just addressed about accountability. This is true, right? At the same time, and we talk about people consolidating power, I understand, how we might view that, but at the same time, let me ask you, and this is more of an open question, not just to you, so it's not pressure on you, but to everyone else. When we talk about humanity, when we talk about people in the broad sense, are people willing to take responsibility for their own lives? And this comes from something I read from Richard Wright some decades ago in his book, The Outsider. He said that most people do not want to take responsibility for their lives. So that's the other side of it. As much as we have people who want to consolidate power, we have other people who are kind of like, well, I don't want to, be responsible for my life. It's Saturn's fault, actually. It's this fault. It's it's my mother's fault. So there is a duality here that I think we must address. So I'm glad you brought in accountability because yeah.
And I think this topic is manifesting in this dynamic too, right? Like Neptune's so wiggly and Saturn wants to pin things down. And so we're like, well, wait a second, who's accountable? Well, personal responsibility versus communal accountability or relational accountability. And
it's a dynamic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's completely, yeah.
But I think I'm grateful for you bringing that to our consciousness.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I feel like exactly what you said, this whole conversation is very Neptune and Saturn. It's both coming together. Yeah, it's like, what is this? What's that?
Cool.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you, Casey.
All right, does anyone else have a comment, a question, anything they want to bring up?
Nestle.
Come on down.
I just loved what you said. I think that U.S. Government saying money for who's going to give more children. That's a Neptune in the fifth in U.S. Sibley chart. That's totally, and then we'll see maybe Saturn actually building that, and it's going to fall apart later. Maybe they will. And then you did actually mention they're going to colonize in Mars, which is...
That's the dream. I didn't say they will.
Which we all know, but it is actually rules Aries, which is Neptune dream. So anyway, Mars is a planet itself. So I just thought that was really cool.
That's a cool connection.
Yeah, that's a good connection.
I just want to bring up, right, because I think the colonization of Mars, like this idea is trying to like alleviate the problems of colonization, which is like the extraction of resources. And I don't think colonization fixes colonization. You know what I'm saying?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm glad you brought the Sibley chart in and the Neptune in the fifth, because the current platform, absolutely is the denigration of women, right? But it also is trying to reproduce more white people. It's not just, you might say that, well, that's for all women.
It was a Nazi tactic.
Yeah.
This was a...
Yeah, it really is dealing with aspects of white imperialism. The whole thing of trying to control the border, right? It's who can come in this country, so we don't want more brown people coming in this country. And to reproduce more white people, right? In terms of that. And then also like, well, if you're gay, lesbian, or trans, whatever, you're not reproducing more white people. So I think it's all about, on some level, trying to keep this country a certain way rather than allowing it to be what it is and what it's meant to be, which is, whether you want to talk about it as a salad, or you want to talk about it as melting, but it is something that is honoring our diversity, not trying to be one thing. And I think that's kind of where we messed up. But that Neptune in the fifth may be related to that as well. Thank you, Nestle.
Leah.
You look at these huge questions we're facing, and I also think about the time of prophecy that we're in with like 2027 with human design, which talks a lot about the dissolution of systems, which is interesting with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And also when we think about any of the major things like the Yuga ending cycles or whatever else, there are these major questions of like, will we become the best of ourselves or the worst of ourselves? And will these other forces conspire with us or against us? So anything you guys want to respond to?
Yeah. I think one of the Saturn Neptune repetitions that we see throughout history is forces behind the scenes. And whether that is human forces that are trying to overthrow or usurp a sovereign, or the term that we use in the Christian tradition is powers and principalities, the spiritual forces that inhabit, embody, possess. This is something that Jonah and I talked a lot about in our exorcism series, that possess ideologies, institutions, and individuals. And so I think that's, I mean, you made many points, and that point in particular, and I think also the point that was brought up earlier is like, well, think about what's behind all this. Like, it's very Wizard of Oz, right? Like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain or the spiritual forces behind the curtain. And so I think that you're right to bring that into the conversation and to encourage folks to remember, like, there may be more at play than meets the eye.
And I think that, also talks about the like sign symbol simulacra that Baudrillard talks about, right? And that we've gotten so far away from the actual real thing, right, in physical reality, but that also might be the spiritual forces that have their own agendas that are animating, this world. And this is like a hermetic idea, right? I talked about this at Astrofest and bringing kind of the planetary energies that are kind of moving through us that we think, oh, I'm doing this, but we may be animated or actually like grabbed by a Saturn transit or a Neptune transit or, any of the other wandering stars that are, we think we're doing what we want to do, but we're actually doing what Mercury wants us to do, right? Or like moving at the pace that Mercury wants us to move at. And, also, you mentioned The Matrix, which came out in 99 during the opening square of Saturn and Neptune coming from the 89 conjunction. And, I think that's just an interesting thing because we're also like living out that mythology or storyline, or that has become so integrated into our consciousness from its inception in 99 during that opening square. It comes out in like March of 99 and the square was perfected in April, right? So and we're living out that storyline in a lot of ways, at least as a metaphor or a mythology. And it's interesting to see what happens as now the Saturn Neptune conjunction is perfecting for this new cycle, and how that like matrix storyline evolves or dissolves or like comes into reality now that we have AI, right? And now that we've sort of evolved ourselves with the technology and our awareness of how plugged in we are to everything, and that things may not be what they seem, right? And AI is, like creating such a at least visual world where it's like, oh, is this real? Right. And that was like on the internet, oh, is this real? But now it's like, oh, I can't trust anything that I see, and it is so divorced from the actual reality, like being in physical reality of being like, okay, this is what's actually happening. I can touch it. I can taste it. Right. And now it's like, I don't even know if that's real at all. You know, I remember during the drones over New Jersey situation that was happening, and I miss them. I want them back, right? I was loving that time period.
New Jersey drones.
Yeah, the New Jersey drones, my favorite football team. But I was like, I got to a point where I was like, I am not believing anything unless I can touch it, right? This is all great, but like, unless I can like put it in my mouth, I do not believe in it.
Oh, goodness. Well, and Matrix is a movie made by trans people, no?
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
Which I think is really interesting too, and circles back to the concept of gender and what is fucking real. Sorry, I don't
And
know
that's
if
what
we're
the
saying here or not.
Cosme
Oh, okay.
That's what they say it is.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it
What
was.
is real, what isn't, and it's only real if you can put it in your mouth.
Hey.
Yeah, that's going to be a quote.
Yeah. And
Also, I just want to say, like, on the pop culture tip, this is in my research, I found this fascinating. Seinfeld comes out in 1989 under the conjunction, under the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and the last episode airs under
About nothing.
Yeah, under the square, under the opening square in 99. Yeah, and a show about nothing, a structure of nothing, right?
So good.
Yeah. Love astrology.
seriously.
I think, where you going?
Yeah, I have something too. Yeah, wait.
I think you brought a lot to the table, of course, and I think one thing I'm thinking about is, the unmanifest. But I think it's thinking about the unmanifest with better origin stories or better explanations, having explanatory power. What I'm talking about, Lindsay and I and a friend of theirs, we went to see Sinners.
Don't spoil it for me.
I'm not going to spoil
Okay, thank
shit.
you. Thank you.
I'm going to say the same thing I said earlier,
okay.
which is just that, it's, an encounter between, black folks and vampires, right? And so the key vampire is an Irish person. And I think, and also it's kind of the framing related to being Irish, but as white. And then there's also other quote unquote white villains. And what I think about related to that, going to what I was talking about, Dr. King and everything else, is it's not enough anymore to say, like, they're like that because they're stupid. They're like that because they're bad. They're like that because they're evil. Why are they evil? What's the origin story? And going back to the point you were making, what I think about, I used to be, I don't know if I divulged this part, my origin story. I used to be a preacher. I used to be a Baptist preacher starting from when I was 12. But where I, even before that, where I ran into problems is I never understood Satan. I was like, but why would an angel suddenly jump up and go like, well, I want to be like the Most High, and then get thrown out? It wasn't until I looked at it from the prism of Islam, and it wasn't so much that he wanted to be like the Most High. He was like, I can't stand humanity. Right? And I was like, oh, that I can understand. So I think we need to find new ways of understanding these, I'll say, spirits, ideas that direct us to hate or even misunderstand each other. So I do think, I'm not thinking they're just in our heads. I don't think they're just ideals. I do think there are spirits at work, but I think we need more to uncover their origin stories. Yeah, so.
It's this interesting time where it's like, I always think about the fact that one of the reasons people have such a hard time discussing religion and politics is because at the core, it's their identity that they're battling for. It's their sense of reality. And they don't have the awareness that you are not necessarily challenging, like it's not an actual threat, but it's experienced obviously as a psychological threat, and psychological threats are experienced in our systems the same ways as physical threats. So they feel that they're under attack and they need to defend their sense of reality or sense of self, when actually that may or may not be what's happening, right? It's really interesting to have a conversation with someone with different views and then to see that come up, right? They just don't have the capacity because they don't have that awareness subconsciously or unconsciously. So I don't know where that leaves us with everything in the time that we're in, but yeah, just some other things to think about. Thanks for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you.
Yeah, what was really interesting too is you had mentioned, you said, are we going to be the best version of ourselves or the worst, And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like during this time, we are really in a like real time evolution where every single day we're always evolving, right? But it's so fast. And like we're watching it all happen right now, or we're participating too. But it's just a different type of evolution, in my opinion, as opposed to the past. And so it's like, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to, we don't know what's going to happen. That's Neptune, right? But yeah, just bringing up what kind of version of ourselves we're going to be is really, really important to think about during this time of this great change, unknowing. Yeah. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question or a statement? Okay, so we're going to close it out. And before we do, I always like to ask my guests what they're reading because I love to read. And I think there's a lot of power and information in books. I still read books front to back. So, Lindsay, do you want to start it off? What are you reading?
Sure. I'm reading a book by Marshall Rosenberg called The Surprising Purpose of Anger. And basically the idea is that anger is a messenger to let us know that we are engaging in a situation that is going to leave us with unmet needs. And that approaching our anger in this way allows us to operate with anger in a more peaceful way, and helps us to work with it and move through it, and not just, either like repress it and cause inner harm or to just unleash it and cause harm to someone else.
Love that. And if you guys are curious about these books, I will put them in the show notes if they interest you. And I like that from actually. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really good.
And Lindsay, who is Marshall Rosenberg? What did he develop?
He developed nonviolent communication method, which is what I presented on at LA Astrofest over the weekend. So
very good.
It's very fresh right now.
Yeah, we'll keep sharing it. That's great.
You.
I feel like when something's fresh in our mind and when we're speaking on it, it's supposed to be heard. So thank you. Jonah.
So I brought with me a book called The Shadow of a Figure of Light, which is the archetype of the alcoholic and the journey to enlightenment, by Cody Peterson. And this is he's a Jungian analyst, and this is about a Jungian and archetypal view of addiction and alcoholism, and looking at the 12 steps and the 12 steps of AA as like a mythology and a way of working with the shadow of alcoholism and addiction. And then the other book that I brought with me is called Outshining Trauma, which is by Ralph De La Rosa. And it's about internal family systems, therapy, and Buddhism, and a way of sort of combining, this therapeutic modality, IFS, with Buddhism and mindfulness practice. Both of them are really good.
Thank you. And Sam, what are you reading?
I'm actually in between books. That sounds like I'm in between jobs, right?
In between lovers.
Right?
I'm a free agent. I'm a book free agent right now.
No, I'm in between books, and I just finished a book last week by Les and Tamara Payne on Malcolm X. So it's called The Dead Are Arising. And it's a biography of Malcolm X. And that was after I had just finished a book on Dr. King called King by Jonathan Egg, E-I-G. So both were definitive biographies. So I really enjoyed them. I had read other biographies of both King and Malcolm X, but these were very thorough, introducing some new elements and new takes on their lives. So that has inspired me to create a class looking at both of these men through the prisms of astrology.
Okay. Is that so? You're working on the class
I'm
now?
working on a class. It looks
Okay.
like it may come together in June.
Okay.
So, if you're on my list, stay attuned because I'm looking at their activism as seen through astrology and their lives.
I love that. Well, speaking of lists, how can our audience find you if they want to work with any one of you? So what's your website?
My website is unlockastrology.com. And then also you can find me on Instagram at S as in Sam, F as in Fred, Reynolds, SF Reynolds. And then I think it's the same on Threads. And then on Blue Sky, it's Unlock Astrology, bluesky.social. And Twitter. Whenever I'm on Twitter or get on Twitter, it's Unlock Astrology.
Okay. And is there anything you're working on now that you want to share? I know you just shared your project, but
Yeah,
are
the
you
project,
seeing?
and there's, I'm going to have another round of classes, Nitty Gritty 3s, my electional and horary class that I'll be teaching, starting also in June. But yeah, for the next month, I'm just going to be in DC and getting ready for NORWAC.
Okay, great. And you're speaking at NORWAC.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
amazing.
speaking, I'm hosting, and I'm closing at NORWAC.
Triple
Okay.
threat.
Wow.
Yeah, right? And I'm a dance. and I'm
Mr.
a-
Yeah.
Beautiful over here.
Wow,
Right?
wow. Yeah,
You can do
Mr.
it all.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jonah, what about you?
So my website is campwizardcamp.com. You can read about me and book with me through that. Although, actually email me if you want to book with me.
Didn't you just say you hate
Wait
email?
a minute. Yeah.
Mixed messages. You can write Jonah. His address
Yeah,
is...
you
So
can
are
send
you
me a
not seeing
postcard.
clients?
No, I'm seeing clients. I took a minute off. I was just working with my therapy and coaching clients for a minute while I was preparing for Astrofest and this and a couple other talks that I'd done since the beginning of the year. And now I'm starting to open the books for astrology and tarot clients again and potentially new coaching clients. But yeah, you can find me at my website, campwizardcamp.com. Email me, campwizardcamp@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram. My handle's Blind Stallion Space Wizard. My favorite is if you just DM me, right? So hit me up on Instagram. My radio show is called The Melee Report. You can find that on SoundCloud, or I put a link in my stories whenever it comes out on Instagram. That's everything. And what I'm working on. What am I working on? Yeah, I'm getting back to just seeing astrology clients and clients. I love doing client work, and so I'm excited to sort of have the space to get back to that. And then in September, I'm co-facilitating a retreat in Greece on the sacred waters. We're going to go to a bunch of sacred sites and be talking a lot about Hera, because a lot of these sites are sacred to her. Talking about Jupiter in Cancer, talking about the element of water in the chart, and also mythologies connected with water and these sacred sites. I'm co-facilitating this with a woman named Sarah Janes, who is a mythologist and does a lot of work around dreams. And so it's sort of like mythology, dreams, astrology, storytelling. It's going to be a lot of fun, and that's going to be in Greece in September 20th to 27th. So I think that's the next big thing. If y'all want to come to Greece,
I do.
hit me up. Yeah, let's go. Sam, you want to come?
I want to go to Greece.
Yeah.
Amazing. And can people book with you on your website for the trip, or how does that work?
I think I have a link on my website.
Okay.
I definitely have a link in the link tree on Instagram. I can't remember what the website is off the top of my head. But yeah, find it on Instagram. It's in my bio, and I'll put something on my website when I get back to New Mexico in the next couple of days.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay, where can people find you? What are you working on? Are you
Yes.
seeing clients?
Yes, I'm seeing clients. This April, I had 4 big speaking engagements. So this is wrapping up, and I'm at the moment sort of happy to report that I'm not having anything in the works right now. I'm just like looking forward to a gentle summer, and I would love to work with anyone here, anyone listening in one-on-one consultation. You can book that through my website, which is badpastor.me. Bad Pastor is my brand. And so you can find me on Instagram at bad.pastor and on YouTube at bad.pastor. I do a monthly forecast with my collaborator, Sarah Knoll, and who's a former Episcopal priest. And so we do our monthly forecasts together with through a lens of spirituality. And so sometimes we talk about scripture or Christian tradition a bit. So if you find yourself kind of straddling those two worlds along with us, jump in. And we have plenty of people who don't, and they still like what we're doing and how we talk about astrology. So I think that's about it right now, but stay tuned because I'm always doing fun collaborations. Jonah and I are talking about offering the exorcism series again. So there's lots of stuff to do. If you're ever in Santa Fe, Sam and I are doing monthly workshops on the signs and their rulers. Jonah sometimes helps facilitate those. And we're out here, we're around.
And I think we were talking about maybe like developing a workshop on IFS and nonviolent communication and astrology.
Yeah, I think we should do that.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to host Jonah and me, thinks that would be cool to do internal family systems and nonviolent communication workshop or like conference on astrology, we're ready.
Yeah,
we have our material.
We'll be ready next week.
Hello, just come back.
All right.
We'll do a little weekend retreat.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome. All right. We'll pick a date. We'll
Hope
let
to see
everyone
you
know.
all there.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So as for me and Cosme, I am giving readings, tarot, and astrology. We have sound baths here 4 times a month. So it's myself and Adina Diaz, and they're usually on Friday nights or Sunday mornings. So if you're interested in that, come see us. We just had a really magical retreat here over the weekend. So I'm kind of not recovering from that, but when you have something very big that's coming up, I've been working on it since January. So now that it's over, I'm kind of like, all right, well, what's next? What am I going to do? But yeah, that's what's happening here. And we will have another podcast next month. I'm not going to announce the speaker yet, but that is that. And I wanted to thank you guys all so much. Yeah. Oh, actually, you want me to talk about Daniel? Could you mention May 9 and 10? Oh, yeah, definitely. So May 9th and 10th at Tucson Astrologers Guild, we have Daniel Giammario. He's going to be the speaker there. So if you're interested, go to TAG's website. It's TucsonAstrolegersGuild.org, correct? Yes. Okay, and you can register there if you're interested in seeing him.
And he's the godfather of shamanic astrology, right?
He is, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and has a lot of Saturn wisdom. So thank you guys. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for participating with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.